Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Puck on the Parkway. The news that we've been waiting for some time and maybe didn't think was actually ever going to happen has happened, and that is Tom Fitzgerald is out as New Jersey Devils general manager. I'm James Burley. He's Daniel Rebane. Our initial reactions and our last look, probably from the regular season into the New Jersey Devils before things finish up in the next couple weeks. 5 games remaining. The Devils have a 0.2% chance of being a playoff team. But the future, I think, Dan, I'll let you take it first. Looks a little bit brighter. Tom Fitzgerald no longer at the wheel for Devils general manager. We'll talk about what that means and what things are going to look like moving forward. But first reactions, Dan, is this cause for celebration for Devils fans?
I don't know if it's like celebration. I just think it's, on to a new chapter and, in the franchise's history, right? There were a lot of positives under Tom. There was more negatives as well. And like, those negatives kind of outshine the positives at this moment in time for a lot of people. So I think a lot of people are excited to move on and get a new face in. But I wouldn't say it's celebration time, right? I think it's just time to move on, find that new face to head up this team and get them back to where they should be, and that's a Stanley Cup contender going forward. We'll kind of break down Fitzy's tenure as a GM and what kind of went wrong, but you know feel for him. I personally was shocked when that news came across my phone. What was it? Yes, last night, 6 o'clock, something like that. Um, I thought they were gonna give him that. I thought they were gonna give him one more year. I think his contract had him with only 1 year left. So I thought they were gonna give him that chance to ride it out. Go all in this summer. But obviously something sped that process up, and they make the decision to part ways. So. Interestingly enough, they're going to be looking for a new president, a new GM. Personally, I thought they were actually going to keep Fitzy as president and then let him hire a GM underneath him. But obviously, the owners have had a different thinking of this, and this front office is going to be brand new, most likely this summer.
And Fitzgerald with this organization since the 2015 season as an assistant for the late Ray Shiro.
Yep.
Took over when Shiro was dismissed in the middle of the 2020 season. So 6 years and change as the main man in charge of the front office, more than 11 years, or almost 11 years, I should say, with the organization. Things ended amicably. Yes, he was fired, but released with the quote, "It was apparent to everyone that the best course of action is to move on." So glad
I
that,
think it was mutual. I think it was like a mutual,
right.
with that, with how they kind of written it. It seemed like it was like, all right, I don't think it's gonna work out. So
It was mutual, but I don't think that if the ownership didn't say, "Hey, we're going to move on," that Tom Fitzgerald would have been okay with moving on. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think he would have come forward with the idea of leaving his
I
post. But
forgot. I forgot who brought it up. It was someone on a video. I think it might have been Johnny Laz, but um, I think he brought up like potentially maybe Fitzgerald with the Nashville opening. We'll talk about that going
yeah,
forward, but maybe he brought up a conversation needed to be had with ownership and kind of seeing where the chips laid. Is he going to get this opportunity going forward, or if not, maybe make this decision now? And I think maybe that's kind of what happened there. So, um, yeah, he's a free agent. I think we'll talk about him going to Nashville. I think all you know signs point to him going down there. We'll see if they hire him, but yeah, I think personally, I think this was a mutual thing. Both sides seeing that this needed a change going forward, and you know, 2026 summer for New Jersey Devils is going to be a really critical, kind of jettison for whoever comes into this front office.
100%, 100% going to be some turnover within the front office. We know that much. We'll see what that means for the players on the ice and if and when certain players move on, where they go to, who they pick up. And there's a lot of things we could talk about with the roster. Tom Fitzgerald, of course, was the inaugural captain of the Nashville Predators for 4 seasons. The opening there, timing kind of looks nicely for him, maybe to go back to a place that he once called home. That I'm sure he has some fondness for, even still at this point in his professional career. And that kind of opens the door for who's going to take over front office wise for New Jersey. There's been early rumblings. Greg Wyshynski reported that he heard people floating out the name Brendan Shanahan, a once two-time New Jersey Devil in the late 80s, early 90s,
Might be
as
one
well
of
as
the worst kept secrets out there right now.
right,
Brendan
as
Shanahan
well
as
as the late
president of hockey
2000s.
ops.
So he would not only be a candidate as the general manager, but would be president of hockey operations overall. Once held that title with the Toronto Maple Leafs, ushered in a number of players into that team, including William Nylander, Zach Hyman, Kasperi Kapanen, and our very own Connor Brown. Um, was in charge when they drafted Austin Matthews first overall in 2016. So some success with ushering a new era of young players in Toronto. Um, Not necessarily needs to do the same thing in New Jersey, but more like needs to add some complementary pieces to what is already a pretty strong, albeit getting older every year, but still generally young core in New Jersey. Players that really should be doing more than just having 0.2% chance of making the playoffs with 5 games to go. But that is what is required of the next man to step in. Going to be a lot of issues for that, whoever that person is. They're going to have to deal with the goaltending contract of Jacob Markstrom, which still doesn't look like the best on paper. We're going to talk about Nico Hischier's comment and whether or not that fans should be hitting the panic button on him. Spoiler alert, probably not yet. And we'll see what it means for Sheldon Keefe, the head coach on the bench for New Jersey. He made a statement the other day that he's aware that what this now means is that his job is going to be evaluated at the end of the season. Granted, every head coach's job is evaluated from every point of every day, especially at the end of a season, especially at the end of an unsuccessful season. But with new blood coming in, new eyes looking over everything that's going down, Sheldon Keefe potentially on the chopping block at the end of the 2025-26 season, Dan. And let's get a little early look into what his time in New Jersey has been and whether or not we think it's been worthy of keeping around. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, before we move on to Keith, I just wanted to ask one question before we move on from Fitzgerald and his time here. I've seen obviously, different accounts posting, what was his biggest mistake as GM, right? I don't know if you had any that came to your mind, but I've four that kind of stick out to me, right? I think the first one was missing out on Johnny Gaudreau and pivoting to Andre Palat. I think that sticks out really bad. Obviously,
Yeah.
you're looking to get that superstar after signing a guy like Dougie Hamilton the year, I believe is the year after they got Dougie Hamilton that they were in on Johnny Gaudreau. He obviously picks Columbus, and the Devils kind of panic pivot to Andre Palat, right? And we know what that contract and player is now. Not our problem anymore because the island he's an Islander, but that was a massive problem, right? I think the no trade slash no moves that he gave out, I think that was a big thing that kind of hampered him from doing other moves, right? And maybe that's the thing that he'll learn from going forward that you can't be just giving out these no move no trades like candy. Like you need to have flexibility at some point on your roster, right? So. Next up is the bottom six. Maybe this year we see with that third line of Gritsuk, Cody Glass, and Lenny Hamanaho that they finally got a third line that kind of was clicking a bit before Grits went down. But overall in his tenure, the bottom six has been brutal. It's been a struggle for him to find guys to either bring in from free agency or through the draft to kind of fill those positions, and it's hampered the Devils' ability to be a complete team. Um, and then
I think you're
finally,
saving one more for the
yeah,
end here.
yeah, and I think we know the biggest one. I think we brought it up when it first happened. I think this was, what broke the camel's back is, missing on Quinn Hughes. And, you don't want to, judge a guy's job on one move that didn't come to fruition, but like it was pretty obvious where Quinn Hughes wanted to go. His GM and president of hockey ops out in Vancouver mentioned that he wanted to go play with Jack Hughes. And when he becomes available, you know, Bill Guerin comes out from the closet and beats you to, acquiring a guy like Quinn Hughes. And I think that ultimately was the last straw for ownership, right? When you have a guy that wants to be here, his brother's here, the talent of Quinn Hughes. I mean, we look at Quinn Hughes's his stats since going to Minnesota. I mean, he has, I think it's like 40 point. He has 40 games or something in that range, like half a season, and he has like 60 something points. So he's fit in like a glove there. Personally, I still don't think he's going to resign there, but that's a different story. But when a guy like that becomes available, you need to pounce, whatever it takes to get him. And ultimately, Fitz couldn't get the job there. And I think, these four things to me were the biggest things that stuck out to me and why he is no longer the New Jersey Devils president of hockey ops slash GM. And whoever comes in this summer to fill the president role and the GM role, they're gonna have to fix some of these rather quickly. And maybe Quinn Hughes becomes available this summer when he, ultimately decides he doesn't want to extend in Minnesota. Maybe he resigns in Minnesota. But if he becomes available again, you have to pounce on that real quick and get that deal done.
Apologies there. So, what in what ways, in what order, how do you prioritize? What things would you say need to be fixed first and foremost? Is it bottom six? Is it um, if Quinn Hughes is available? That's number one. Um, is it about restructuring some contracts so not everybody's on no movement clauses? For me, I think the no movement clause is arguably right up there with Quinn Hughes
Hmm.
because even if you don't get certain players here or there, and the lack, the inability to restructure the team, he was just handcuffed
Yeah.
based on so many players being cemented within the team. And while I think it's a good thing, it shows trust in one party to the other when you have no movement clauses. But for every player, for it to be rare for a player not to have one I think is
Yeah.
a little bit, not many teams operate like that. The Devils, I think, had the second most no movement clauses of any team
Yeah,
in the
they're top
NHL.
they're top three, I believe. Yeah, and they're probably
Yeah.
second, like you said. So,
And that's not for me, that was the biggest issue.
mm.
And then Quinn Hughes, you put that on top, you miss a chance to get arguably the best defenseman in the world, second best if you're counting Cale Makar. Um, I think those two moves alone outweigh Palat, outweigh the bottom six because the Devils, I thought, did a good job, and Tom Fitzgerald, maybe give him a little bit of credit here, putting together a forward core this year. The problem was they were a player or two short in the top six that they had to put players that belonged in the bottom six up there.
And you know what? You bring that up. I think that might have been one of if I was gonna do a top five, that'd probably be my fifth one. Is before the season or before the last month or so, not finding a winger that could play with Jack Hughes and
Yep.
Jesper Bratt. So it was just a lot of these things that kind of built up over time, right? Some might say his draft history, but like when we look at most of his draft picks, I mean, they're like the top end draft picks, first, second round guys. They're in the NHL or they were traded for other pieces to help this current team out, right? So maybe those later round picks kind of never materialized. Um, and maybe you want a better hit rate there, but you know, I think though these things that I kind of listed out here, um, if we're gonna rank these for me, yeah, I'd probably put Quinn Hughes as number one because like a player like that just doesn't come around so
No.
ever. It just never happens. So and when you have all these connections, you're close with the family. You have the assets. You realistically had the assets to go get this guy, and For whatever reason, it just never materialized. You weren't able to execute the trade. And now, he's a year away from free agency. Does he get there? That's the biggest question now. And I would say, yeah, the no trade, no moves, because that kind of potentially affected that type of deal for New Jersey to get a guy like Quinn Hughes. So, a lot of work for this incoming GM and incoming president, when they kind of, set their mark on this team because, you know, not a lot of guys you can realistically move without asking them, would you move? And I think that's going to be a hard part is trying to get some of these guys off the roster. Like we have how many guys on defense right now? Like we have 8 guys that can be in the NHL next year. Not all of them are going to be there, and all of them are probably NHL players. So it's going to be interesting what decisions these guys make coming in. But there's some improvement need to be had, especially getting that winger in the top six. They still do need another winger in that top six
100%.
if they're gonna make that jump. Fourth line has been brutal this year. They finally found a third line. I'll say that. Cody Glass, Arseny Gritsyuk and Lenny Hamanaho, like when they were clicking. I mean, they looked like one of the best lines on the team.
Hmm.
So, you know, we'll talk about it more, but Connor Brown has kind of found his way as well with Jack and Jesper. So there's some positives about this team. It's just about, completing it, right? I think we're probably 75, 80% to a contending type team. It's just about getting those last roster spots corrected and upgrading the talent in there. So, lots of work. It's going to be fun now that we know the direction of this team, and we're going to be hiring, a new front office, head of front office and GM. It's going to be interesting to kind of get in their heads and kind of project what they are thinking and what moves could be happening this summer.
And that's why I'm interested to see how they prioritize that. Do they
Hmm.
go after the top six caliber scoring winger first? Do they get some more beef on the fourth line, someone to play next to a Bukestad or Cotter, maybe? Are
And
those
they have the
players
assets to do all this, by the way. So,
right? Are these players that stick around? Is Dougie Hamilton, immediately become trade bait the day the season ends? Is that something they're going to explore?
hmm
What do they
Nemec.
do with regards to Simone Nemitz? Dawson Mercer is the one I've heard a lot. And then,
Yep.
that begs the question if Mercer is now, a player, if you're trying to upgrade your bottom six, does Mercer become, your permanent third line guy, which I would say he's tailor made to be, a middle six taxi player between those two lines and stop, pigeonholing him into being a first liner when he's not. If he can find a home, then maybe you don't necessarily use him as a trade. And then who knows? Maybe your Glass, Gritsyuk, Hemanaho line becomes your fourth line, and that ends up being a pretty darn good bottom six. However, they'd like to put it together. I don't know. These are things that the next man in charge is going to figure out. Let's talk about Sheldon Keefe now
Yep.
because season two finished in third in season one on 91 points. A far cry from how good the Devils were in that 2022-23 season before they fired Lindy Ruff in 23-24.
Yep.
Um, Took a step back again this year, could match the points if they win out. Could actually exceed
Exceeded.
them in points. They could finish with as many as 93 if they win out. They could win 45 games. Is it 45
It's
games?
it's crazy to see like
And they're not going to be a playoff team.
their
It-
record and yeah,
yeah, 40 wins and still might not be close enough to
the
the
East,
playoffs.
man,
Yeah, that's just the
gauntlet.
Eastern Conference is tight after those first few teams.
Yeah.
Only a couple juggernauts, and then everybody else kind of fighting for the scraps here. And then just looking at the standings, like we've seen in the last couple seasons, nobody really wants those wild cards. Nobody
No, they
wants to be
don't.
the third
That's
team.
why we're still
So
alive.
the Devils are still alive. They fired Tom Fitzgerald, went from 0.1% to 0.2%. So correlation or causation, you can be the judge of that. But um, yeah, I think let's just give our opinions on this because it's
Mhm.
going to be a matter of opinion.
Yeah.
Sheldon Keefe comes in with the pedigree, climbing the ladder in Toronto, being a guy who took a young, talented team and I don't want to say made them better than the sum of their parts, but got them to look like a team more than any other coach I've seen be able to do with Toronto and with this crop of players, especially. I mean, just take a look
Yeah.
at them now, dumpster fire. But uh, you, I'm trying to maybe a little harsh there, but
No, they
um,
are a dumpster fire
they
up
are
there
a
in
dumpster
Toronto.
fire. But no need to rub salt in the wound. Um, it seemed like at first was a bit of a confusing hire because the story of Toronto is always can they get the job done in the playoffs? Well, he won
Mm.
a round, which is more than any other coach
Took them a bit,
in
but yeah.
yeah had been able to do in a long time, but still fell short. Kind of felt like you know hadn't hadn't done the hard part of getting over the hurdle with which the Devils were missing at that point, but
Yep.
had the pedigree, the style philosophy that the
Hmm.
Devils really should have approached. And we saw that in 24, 25, for the most part, at least. And we've seen it when the Devils have played good hockey this year. That's what they've looked
Yeah.
like. They've been playing high energy, team that'll beat you on the rush, team that makes it tough in the neutral zone, that uses their speed and their youth. And that's where their best players excel. Young, quick, skillful players. But it hasn't been 100% consistent.
Hmm.
And when it comes down to it, you kind of have to look at the coach as well as the front office, and that's what they're going to do this coming summer. What decision would you make, Dan, regarding Sheldon Keefe, and why?
It's really tough. Like I think it's a 50-50, right? If there's a better
Mhm.
name out there that kind of fits this team, fits how they, the style of the best players and how they kind of play and gets them to improve their game even better, then I'd say go get that guy. But, right now, is there a guy out there where I'm like, yeah, he's probably a better fit than Sheldon Keefe? Probably not. People might look at Bruce Cassidy just because he's a winning coach and what he's done with, Boston and Vegas. But like, I think those two teams are completely different stylistically than what New Jersey is. And is the GM slash president looking to kind of switch up how this team plays? I think we've already seen what they look like when they've switched up from how they play. They're terrible. Like we've seen it, right? So it's going to be interesting. When they are on their game, they are one of the best teams in the league. We saw it to begin the year. We saw it to begin last year up until Christmas break. This year, before Jack injured his, pinky finger unexpectedly, you know, when this team is playing their game, the style fits them and they play well. I think the biggest question for all fans is when healthy, are they able to play this type of style in the playoffs? And when they've gotten into the playoffs, under Keefe, well, it was just last year, so they obviously didn't have a Jack Hughes, and they were also missing a couple other guys who went down. They ran into Carolina and they've struggled against Carolina. It's, for whatever reason, their style kind of offsets our style. And I think that's going to be a big thing going forward is there a guy out there that can unlock this team to get over the hump over Carolina? Because I think against any other team in the division in 7 games, I think the Devils can beat any team in this division in 7 games. Right now, even right now, in 7 games. Carolina, I think, we would see another result of last year, right? And is that personnel? Is that system? I think it's probably a system thing. So I don't know what your opinion is, and if there's anybody out there that you right now that currently is available that you would be looking to bring in. Because before Peter DeBoer was hired, that would have been my guy. I would have been like, yeah, go get him. I think, he brings that credibility of getting to, cup finals, not winning them. Obviously, he's fallen short there, but I think his style of play when you've seen him in Dallas, and other stops kind of, you know, not the same, but like I think he could get the best out of these current players and the type of play they play. So right now I'm at 50-50, and unless there's a better name that kind of comes available, I think you kind of ride with Sheldon Keefe at this current moment.
I'm the same way. I'm pretty split on this. I still think stylistically Sheldon Keefe makes sense, but then you mentioned Carolina and you say, is it a personnel issue? Is it a system issue? I would argue it's parts of both, and then I would add
Yeah.
a third element. It's mental. Those guys just seem to have whatever the Devils' kryptonite is. They always find a way to make those matchups look like men against boys,
Mm.
and I think part of that starts up here. But uh, it's tough to look around and say anybody available now and say they would definitely be an improvement. One name that I would consider, but I'm not sure stylistically it would be, the best fit is Bruce Cassidy. Um, and I know there's talks about the Maple Leafs being interested in Bruce Cassidy. I don't think there's any actual movement there other than just rumors.
Yeah.
I don't think he makes more sense than Sheldon Keefe. I think it's the sexiest name available right now, just someone who's had success very recently.
Yeah, it's a guy that's
Uh,
won.
exactly, but is he going to be the best formula for the Devils? I have my doubts about that. I mean, was a very different team to what the Devils are trying to be. Um, I think the goaltending situation arguably similar, and that's something that Bruce Cassidy was able to work with, a minimalist goalie situation, so to speak. Um, but then I think once teams start to miss the playoffs and start to get eliminated from the playoffs, some more coaching names will become available, and I think then would be a better time to say, well, is there a better name, a better fit
Yeah.
than a Sheldon Keefe? Right now, I think it's hard to say that. And it's really hard to find one, especially stylistically, that looks any different. So I'm with you. I'm 50-50 here. Um, I like Sheldon Keefe and I like what he provides for the New Jersey Devils. If they can't be consistent, then I think he's got to go.
Yeah.
Um,
I think that's his
and
biggest critique.
yeah, and but who's to say that if they stay healthy and bring in a left winger to play next to Nico Hischier and Timo Meyer, who is, capable of scoring 40 goals a year, um, I would argue they probably will stay pretty consistent, right? Like their biggest issue this year was they weren't getting, you know, bullied out of games like
No,
some
they just
people
couldn't
claim they
score.
are. They couldn't score in the first period. And when they don't have a lead after two periods, they're toast. And when they do have a lead after two periods,
Still
they're like what,
undefeated.
24-0? They
Still
still haven't
undefeated.
lost. They still haven't blown a third period lead yet this year. So the elements of a contending team, it's right there. But they are still a little removed from that incredible comeback team of 2022-23 that set franchise record for wins and points.
Hmm.
Had the first goaltender not named Marty Brodeur to win 30 games. Vitek Vanacek did that. That was Vitek Vanacek, if you'll recall. So it's tough to look at the coach and say that this is all on him, but I have I have my doubts about whether or not those things can remain consistent, but those variables are not necessarily on him, and that's why I don't want to throw him under the bus. Um, yeah, so I think that can segue us nicely into talking about this quote that came out from Nico Hischier. Um,
Yeah, people
a
are
lot
gonna
of
take
people
this
freaking
so
out.
so great.
A lot of people are freaking out about this, Dan. Let me just pull it up verbatim so I don't get this wrong.
Are we
Um,
shocked
that people are freaking out or that he said this?
that people are
Because
freaking out?
no, neither. I'm not shocked about either of these. I've seen some comparisons to perhaps a Zach Parise situation. Um, I'm not convinced about that yet. Nico was asked about Tom Fitzgerald being out of GM, if that changes anything about his future. He becomes a free agent at the end of the 2026-27 season. He said, I'm just focusing on playing hockey here. I still have one more year, so I'm with the Devils right now, and then we'll see what happens. The I think that just the way he's saying this, I'm with the Devils right now and we'll see what happens, scares people. And I understand why that might just the language in which it's being said. I wouldn't read too much into this. I think he's he's a pro's pro. All these Devils have had extensive media training for one. This is a very Devils
He is.
answer.
I think he's the most media trained person. Like when talking to any like regular NHL media, he is not going to give
Mhm.
you anything. And
Yeah.
and then that's the biggest thing. I think people are trying to make this into something that he did not say.
Right. And he's just saying this is essentially just a long-winded way of saying no comment, which is what the captain of a team should say about the GM. Um, if the players were openly trashing the GM or praising the GM beyond a few sentences, I think it would be a little strange. And I'm glad he doesn't say anything more here. So
I
I'm with
mean,
the
we
Devils right now, and we'll see what happens. I think is exactly what it says. He's like, we'll talk about my contract when it's relevant in a year.
and I
Yeah.
mean, we have to remember what he said when, the rough stuff happened. He kind of had the same tone and kind of the
Mhm.
same message. It's like, and people tried to make it out, yeah, he doesn't want to play for Lindy Ruff anymore. It's just not what he said at all. So,
Mhm.
um, and I think, people try to compare it to other situations like Zach Parise. I think, Devil's Insider brought this up. Remember when Jonathan Toews was in his final year, right? And he was saying to the media, "I want to be here. This is where I want to play. I want to play with the Islanders." And what happened? He left for free agency. So, do you want him to just say, "Yeah, I want to be here"? Like, is that what you want to hear? I mean, obviously he could think that, but he's not gonna give up his leverage with the new GM, whoever that's gonna be, and kind of handcuff him in negotiations when he's eligible on July 1st. So I think that's the whole thing about this as well is that he's keeping his leverage in negotiations. So personally, from everything I've seen and heard from Nico Hischier, he wants to be here. He is the captain of his team. Um, I think he wants to end his career here. The team, gave him that chance, drafted him first overall, brought him in as a rookie right away. They've given him everything, and I think obviously the losing could affect a player like him, but I think he is looking at the situation of everybody's entering the prime of their career, and I think that he is the guy to kind of be one of those leaders to carry them through it. So, from everything I've heard and seen, it points to me thinking that he wants to be here, for an extended period of time. So I'm not worried one bit. So unless something comes out where you know where he specifically says he does not want to resign when the new GM and president come in, and he specifically said that, then I think you can start to panic and say you
Yeah.
probably have to trade him. But we are not at that point yet. Nothing like that has been said, and everything points to him wanting to be here. So. That's where I stand at currently.
I don't expect him to say anything like that.
Yeah,
I expect him to want to be here for one, and even if he didn't, I don't expect him to outwardly profess that until
I
maybe
I just meant
when the
I just
time is
meant
right.
like saying that to the president or GM behind closed doors, right? And
Of
that's
course,
just
of course.
clearly not have been has been said. Him and Fitz and his agent were already kind of starting negotiations. So like clearly he wants to be here. Clearly I think a deal gets done, but it's just him not knowing who's gonna be here, not knowing who his boss is gonna be. You're not just gonna you know outward say that yeah I'm going to be here, I want to be here, because things can change. So you don't want to put yourself in that position where you look like a fool like a couple months later, right? And people kind of say,
Yeah.
hey, but you said a couple months ago you wanted to be here and now you're not. So like clear, he's just staying neutral, being a captain, media trained. He's not going to give you anything, and that's what they kind of teach you. And you know, for us media guys, obviously it's kind of hard, right? You kind of you want to make something out of this, but like there's really nothing that you can run with this. So
And I think though the one biggest obstacle to Nico Hischier potentially not coming back to the Devils would be if whichever GM or president of hockey operations they bring in has a vision that doesn't include him or
yeah,
potentially sees him as a trade something a trading asset, which I also would be surprised to find out, regardless of who the GM
I mean,
becomes.
especially if you're looking at this roster, right? If you trade Nico Hischier, I mean, you don't have a second line center anymore. Like,
No.
sure, Cody Glass has played really good, but he's not a second line center. We've already seen that. So unless you're trading Nico Hischier and bringing someone in that trade to kind of take his place, you automatically lose that trade.
Yeah, 100%. And I think we can leave Nico at that
Yes.
because um, Lord knows he's already got a ton on his mind. We don't need to be adding to that. Not that
Yeah.
we would be, but let's take this time to look at how the Devils are actually doing. You can't talk about the Devils right now if you don't talk about how good Jack Hughes has been since
I
scoring
mean,
the golden goal at the Olympics. 36 points in 20 games, which is the most of any player in the NHL since the Olympics. Um, you've heard people talking about how not only is he, playing like he never cut his hand earlier this season, like he's playing with all this confidence, but he's acting more like a leader. You can
Hmm.
see that both on the ice with the way he's, just taken over games, but with reports that he's been more vocal than before. He's got more confidence about him. And, this is exactly the type of step that Devils fans have hoped he would take for a long time. Not that any Devils fan was really disappointed with his output on the ice.
Hmm.
But I seem to recall in the lead up to the Olympics, people upset with his attitude and his willingness to take games off with injury,
Hmm.
which have quickly uh, you've stopped hearing those.
Yeah.
Good, because those were always so stupid. But um, yeah, like
Nonsense.
here's this guy, he doesn't want to play hockey. Yeah, sure. Um, Jack Hughes has been an example on the ice and off the ice for this Devils team at this point, post Olympics, playing with a 140 plus point pace. If you combine the way he started the season to the way he's playing now, he'd be about 130 point pace. We're talking superstar status here. We're talking top 10 player in the world status
We're
here.
talking MVP candidate.
Yeah, yeah. I'm hoping that this momentum in his game can continue into next year for the Devils' sake, and for his own sake. If he continues to do this, his confidence level will be continuing to surge. And the team around him has done better. I think
Well,
it's what,
first, let me
11 of their
piggyback.
last 15. Sorry,
Well, let me
continue.
let me just piggyback off of what you said, and him becoming more of a leader, being more vocal. I mean, we like the Olympics really did just change his life. Not only on the ice, off the ice, outside, endorsements, making these, media appearances on these shows, right? It really just did change him and how he kind of views himself on this specific team in New Jersey, right? I mean, you see it with the media, right? For his first, whatever how many seasons in the NHL prior to the Olympics, right? It seemed like he just didn't want to be part of the media, right? It just seems like, he was always kind of trying to be funny, just not be, he wasn't really serious, right? Trying to take media seriously. But since coming back, I mean, you see a huge difference in his answers to questions after games, after losses, after wins, right? It is a stark difference, You go from white to black, like clearly different. So he learned a lot from all those guys in that locker room with USA Hockey, and it has benefited him on the ice. Because I mean, you just talked about it. He's posting 1.8 points per game since coming back. Like no other player in the league has done that. Despite if you want to say, yeah, the Devils have had a weaker schedule coming out of the break. Nobody else in the league has more points than Jack Hughes, right? And I think Mike Rupp touched on it this morning on his pod with the guys in the tri-state where they talked about he brought up the moment between him and Brendan Dillon after Dillon stepped up against Anderson after he was kind of sandwiched in between Anderson and Jack Eye. And Jack I noticed it right away. Right as he threw his first punch, Jack was tapping his stick. He was going away at it, and then after that, picked up all Dylan's stuff, brought it to him in the penalty box, and gave him a hug. And you just hadn't seen that type of kind of leadership, or I don't know what else to say, but like he just is a different person now. Obviously, his skill is still the same, but how he kind of carries himself, handles himself, and how he leads on his team is very different. And that is a massive development in his career and for the Devils going forward. Because again, he's still 24. He's going to turn 25 this offseason. He technically is not even entering his prime yet. He still has a couple more years, but this is one of the best players in the league when healthy and playing his game. We're seeing it right now. And if this is the type of guy you're getting going forward for next year, the next couple of years, the ceiling is Stanley Cup for this team. So you have to build around this guy. You have to get the pieces right. You have to come out of this offseason thinking to yourself, we did everything possible to build the best team we can. So I just wanted to touch on Jack Hughes right there. Just what a player. What a player we're watching because, you know, there's a realistic chance he puts up 80 points in 61 games. And like coming out of the Olympic break, what he had, 40 something. So for him to kind of double up his points in whatever how many games it's going to be, 25. I mean, just, shout out to him for taking this kind of part of the season seriously because he could have just came out of the Olympics saying, "Hey, I won the gold medal. I we know we're not going to make the playoffs," and he could have took games off like people think he was prior to the Olympics. But look at him now; he's one of the best players in the NHL, and I hope this continues for him because if this is going to be the type of leader, type of player on the ice and off the ice for the Devils, yeah, I mean, watch out next year because this could be a really good team.
Yeah, and in the wake of how good Jack has been, we've seen something of a resurgence in Jesper Bratt's game.
Yep.
He received a lot of criticism pre-Olympics. He's just shy of a point per game at 68 points through 77. Not quite as good as he was in each of the last two seasons where he was over a point per game, but he's hit exactly the target he was each of the two seasons before that.
Yeah.
So not so much cause for concern with Bratt. In addition to that, he's with the exception of the Ranger 4-1 loss to the Rangers, Bratt's been consistently picking up 5 points in each of the last few games. So again, a player that's been a joy to watch has been actually scoring on breakaways, where it felt like he missed so many in a row.
Oh man,
Connor Brown has found his home
Connor
in the team.
Brown. I
He's been
mean,
fantastic. That line, they found their premier top line. Hughes, Brown, Bratt, that's been uh, the go-to three-player system that they've missed for most of the season, where they were mixing and matching and couldn't really find a consistent groove. And you take away a couple of those losses from right out the gate against post-Olympic opposition. They've been 12 wins out of 20 games since that, and you take those first two losses away and a couple of ugly ones. This is a team that's winning 75% of their games after the Olympics, with a couple exceptions. They've been that good, right? Like they've if only they could have had this
yeah,
between the months of November and February. They missed out
and that's
on
a
too
thing,
many too
and that might
many
be a
important
thing
games.
to bring up, right? Is after Jack went down, it seemed like they shifted their style to a different type of game, and it clearly affected them. And I don't know if that was Sheldon Keefe's idea, maybe one of the assistant coaches. Did that come down from Fitzgerald? I don't know where it came from, but they were clearly playing a different style along with not scoring, and it clearly affected them because we'll talk about maybe the defense and how they've played, but now the defense is just being activated all over the ice, and that's just kind of helped everybody in the offensive zone, even in the defensive zone. I feel like there's some times where they're out of position, but like I feel for the most part they're in their positions, they're making smart plays and making smart pinches. I don't think I've seen maybe once or twice where you're like, whoa, that was a brutal pinch and it led to a goal, right? Most of the time that comes from Nemec, but like again, he's still a young kid, kind of learning when to make those decisions. But yeah, I think that might be a question that to ask Keith after the season is what kind of led to that change back to what you guys were doing. Because even when Jack came back from his injury, they were still kind of playing that reserve type of game, trying to keep teams off the board, and it clearly affected their offensive output. Not scoring also did that too, but there was a clear difference in the style of play they were playing. Before Olympic break and this past like month and a half, right? So, um, yeah, and question for you, right? Obviously, they're clicking right now that top line, right? They're looking good. You know, Connor Brown's getting power play goals as well. But is that a line that you look at for next year as solidified, or do you kind of still go out there looking for a guy that could maybe, be a permanent solution on that first line with Jack Hughes and a Jesper Rat, and Connor Brown becomes, that guy in the middle six that kind of helps going up and down the lineup. What are your thoughts on that?
I would say I'm like 75% um, convinced that he'll be with Hughes and Bratt
Like
into
personally,
next year.
like if you go out there and Brady Kachuk's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
available and you can get a Brady Kachuk, I think you have to put Brady Kachuk on that first line because I feel like
Yes.
his style kind of emulates what Connor Brown does. He's not the same skater as Connor Brown, but he's able to get in those positions. He's just a better offensive player. He brings that physicality as well on that line where you kind of want someone that has a bit more physicality playing next to Jack just in case something does happen. And I think Brady could be a perfect part to that. But if you're telling me you're not kind of bringing in that type of guy and you're kind of looking for a guy next to Meyer and Nico,
Yeah,
then I think you have to start the season if they are clicking like this these last 5 games, right?
that's why I say 75% because I think more urgently they need someone to play next to those two. If you can find a way for Timo Meyer to play 70 plus games as the right wing next to Nico Hischier, as opposed to having him bounce between a couple lines, playing him on the right, well, sometimes on the left. No, Timo Meyer is a player that you want to know his role, to have him be comfortable, push him to get 30 plus, maybe 40 goals. He's not been given the opportunity to do that. People have said he's a bust. He's, not been able to do what he was brought here to do. I think part of that is the circumstances in which he's been playing, and he's not been given the opportunities. You get a high octane scoring line one caliber left winger to play with with Hischier and Meyer, then that kind of leaves Brown to play with Hughes and Bratt, which I think is perfectly fine if you get more of what you've been seeing lately. That's why I say 75%. But if it's a Brady Kachuk or I'm blanking on who another
Matthew
potential
Nyes.
Matty Nyes, sure. If that's the type of player that's available, then I think maybe Brown becomes, your middle six guy, and then you put that guy next to Hughes or Bratt. But if it's, I want to say a Zach Hyman type, a guy who's going to stick around in front of the net and just
Well,
score a
that's
bunch of
Connor
goals,
Brown.
it's just a magnet to the net. Well, you don't need to have another one of those guys to play with Brad or Hischier. You put or Bratt or Hughes. I keep mixing up the line. You put that guy with Meyer and Nico. Uh, that's what I'm saying. So for me,
I
I
think
don't
it just
mind
point
Brown finding a long term home with those two.
it kind of just points out that this team still has a lot of work to do,
Hmm.
and that I'm interested to see how the new GM kind of identifies what his priorities are because you know you look at it, top line guy, is he going to go after a first line winger? Is he going to go after just a top six guy? What is he gonna look for an addition on defense? Upgrade there instead of and then move out some of those guys. It's gonna be really fascinating to see what this front office does.
And we'll talk a little bit more in detail at the end of the season
Mm.
when we really take a good look into free agents. I think one name that maybe sticks out for me in this category is Alex Tuck. 30 goals on the year.
No chance we're affording him.
I don't think we are, but I mean, he's
He
probably the
wants he wants
most.
10 million plus.
Yeah. But who else then can fit this bill in terms of free agents? Otherwise, we're talking about sending a trade package somewhere. Maybe Anthony Mantha,
No,
but
no, 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 no. We can't do Anthony,
then we're
man.
getting
He's
we're
not
getting a
gonna
little
score.
old a bit.
He's not gonna score 30 goals next year, especially not with Pittsburgh. He's not gonna do that again. But yeah, we'll get
Then
we'll
the
get deep.
market starts to get a little bit more
Oh no,
more barren after
yeah,
that.
free agency is very weak. I mean,
Yeah.
we will talk about it a lot more in depth, but when I was looking at it before kind of everything kind of happened, I was putting it together, I was having fun on Puckpedia. Shout out to them and their,
Mhm.
GM simulator basically. And I was going through it, I was like, you know what? Yo, let me get Patrick Kane on this team. And I put him
Yeah.
with and I put him with Timo Meyer and Nico Hischier, and I was like, well, hold on now. I was like, hold on now, maybe just. But then obviously everything kind of happened, and you know Do you want to trade for Brady Kachuk? Is Quinn Hughes available? Do you do both of those? I was trying to see if I could fit both of Brady and Quinn on the same team in two different trades. So again, there's a lot of avenues this front office can do now. Obviously, some of these guys still have the trade protection that you're gonna have to be like, you know what, we don't see a spot for you here. Are you gonna be willing to move? So a lot more of that we'll discuss in the summer.
Yeah, so like we said, we'll discuss free agency when we get there, but we've got
Five
five
games
more
left.
games in the day.
5 games left.
And hey, look, don't lose hope. There's 0.2% chance there's a few more games after that even. I'm kidding. Lose hope. They're not going to go. But in those 5 games, Dan, they play the Flyers tonight as of time of recording this
Yep.
in New Jersey.
We could be
They play.
eliminated by the time this comes out.
This is also true. This is true. They play the Penguins on Thursday, back to back, home and home against a couple of Pennsylvania teams. Then they go on the road to face the Red Wings, back at home on the back to back against the Senators. And then they end the season Tuesday, April the 14th, on the road in Boston.
Yep.
5 games left. Let's one last time for 2025-26. How many points out of these 5 do you think they end with? And then we can wrap it up.
I will say, right, I think tonight is the biggest game. Obviously every game that they go forward now is the biggest game going forward to them. But if they're able to win this game tonight against probably the hottest team out there, like and if you're looking for a team to try to make a run into the playoffs through the wild card, it is the Flyers, especially after they added a guy like Porter Martone from Michigan State after they were eliminated uh, in the NCAA tournament. Shout out to Wisco for that. But if they're able to get this win tonight, I think there's a real possibility that they go on and win these 5 games, right? If they win these 5 games, I think they could get in. I really do think that everything could line up for them perfectly and they get in, right? So I think it all kind of starts tonight. If they beat the Flyers, I'm not scared of Pittsburgh. We talked about this, pre-show. You know, every team in the division, I think the Devils could beat in a 7 game series. They're not playing Carolina these last 5 games. So, getting Pittsburgh at home, I think they could beat them. Detroit on the road. Detroit is collapsing before our eyes once again. Going into Detroit and Little Caesars to get a win, I think they could do that easily. And then you get Ottawa at home. Last home game of the year. Ottawa's still trying to push too, but depending on what type of form they're in when that game comes around, they could be fumbling as well because it's for Ottawa. It's been they have a couple of good games back to back, but then they'll fall off again and lose 2 games in a row. So and then you end the season against Boston. If you go into that game knowing win and get in, I'm putting my money on the Devils because Boston by that time is probably already clinched. I think they're already 6 points up of the final wild card spot. So I think Boston won't have anything to play for. They could be resting guys. Going to that last game, a win gets you in potentially. For positivity, there's a lot of positives going around Devils Twitter right now with the firing of Tom Fitzgerald. I'm gonna be positive. I think the Devils get all 10.
Wow.
And obviously, by the time this comes out, they could have already lost to the Flyers, and the dream is dead. But I'm gonna go with it. I think how they've been playing this past month and a half, the way Jack Hughes is playing, the way the team is kind of it might be too late, but kind of coming together. Everybody seems to be coming together. Let's talk about Luke Hughes. Luke Hughes of all
Luke Hughes
people is
has been the
starting
best defenseman since the Olympics.
scrums. Talk about a guy turtling against Luke Hughes of all people, turtling against Luke Hughes, and Luke Hughes going in there and giving him the business on the ice up in
Should have been a
Montreal.
penalty
I mean, clearly it should have
on
been
the
a
hit.
penalty.
Should have
Like
been definitely been a
it
penalty.
clearly should have been a penalty, but
In the
I
words
mean,
of Peter Laviolette, typical Montreal.
I mean, it was let's not get off on a tangent here, but very
Mhm.
big Montreal tax up there with those officials. But this team seems to be coming together. And again, it could be too late, right? They could win all 5 games and they still miss out, right? But I've liked how they played. You know, Markey got a shutout.
First one in exactly one calendar year.
I will say, you know, both games against Montreal and their high flying offense. Obviously, Montreal won in the shootout in New Jersey, but Cole Caulfield didn't score his 50th.
Mhm.
I thought it was easily he was going to get his 50th. That would have been such a New Jersey thing that happened. Um, but yeah, I think going in these 5 games, you know, the Devils are looking to play spoiler in every single one of these games. And by doing that, they could put themselves into a position where they could make the playoffs as the last seed, which would be very funny to see, right? After all the negativity surrounding this team, they go on a run and make the final playoff spot. It would just be such like an ironic thing. It would be poetic. So I want to see it. I just want to see them just kind of just sneak in. It would be justice for a lot of things that we've been talking about and what we've seen these past since post Olympic break. So I'm gonna say they get all 10. Well, how about you, sir?
I'll say 8. I'm confident, but I can't be that confident.
What game do
I
they
do.
lose?
I think they lose against the Bruins
Oh, the last
because
game?
even though they've won the previous 4. They'll have been eliminated by then. Because just 1 or 2 wins from the teams in front of
Okay.
them could eliminate them.
Okay.
So I think at that point, they'll just be done with it. You know what I mean? They'll still be in it. Boston will be fighting for a uh, a third place finish instead of just the wild card.
Hmm.
So they'll have something to fight for. But I do think the Devils finish the season strong, and if they do win 4 of their last 5, they'll have matched their points total from last year.
And
And if they win more than 4 out of 5,
it's it kind of it just
they'll
oh
have exceeded
man,
it. That's crazy.
the 1 year that East is like it's not like it's great, but like everybody seems to be good, right?
Mhm.
And then you look at the Pacific Division.
This the ceiling is lower, but the floor is very high.
I mean, you look at the Pacific Division. I mean, even Connor McDavid said they're playing they're pillow fighting out there. Like it it was just a perfect storm this year, right? You know, Devils losing the amount of games going into the break and then coming out of the break. And of course, they kind of go on this run. There's a little run down the stretch and they could miss the playoffs by 2 points, and then you look back, you're like, man, just a missed opportunity. Because coming in, that's what you want to do going into the playoffs is go in hot, and they might be one of the hottest teams in the NHL if they kind of win these 4 out of 5 games. And to miss out by like 2 or 3 points would be, you know, disappointing and in a brutal way. But I think that kind of just, as we said last pod, you want to win as many games as possible, just kind of giving you that confidence that the players are here. We are the solution. It's just about doing this for a full 84 games starting next year.
And look, the Devils have are tied in the NHL for the fewest loser points. 3 OT shootout losses.
Yep.
Um, Losing games in regulation really killed them. If they had just gotten over the line
Yep.
in 5 more games, they could look a little bit more like a playoff team.
Hmm.
And they would be maybe a little more confident for this final push. They'd have something more to play for than just pride. But that's going to bring us up to speed. We didn't mention that Arseny Gritsyuk is out for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
Upper body injury
Unfortunate.
that's not
Unfortunate.
been super disclosed. We'll have. I'm not sure if he's gotten the surgery or if he's
Pesci's
going to
not
get the
coming back.
surgery.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Pesci's not going to
Pesci's
come
not coming
back.
back either. These are things that we'll have to wait till the start of the 2026-27 season. But for now, 5 more games to enjoy, and then a tumultuous offseason we expect for the New Jersey Devils. For Daniel Rebane, I've been James Burley. This has been Puck on the Parkway. Thank you so much for joining us. I assume the next time you hear from us, we'll be talking offseason. And yes, congratulations to Big Blue, the Michigan Wolverines. for taking the national championship away from
Hey, we're
UConn
going for hockey this week too. Starts
and
Thursday.
a chance to make it
A double.
another national title with the Frozen Four coming up. Dan, any final words?
No, man. I'm just, it sucks that hockey season is kind of coming down to, is dwindling away, but, best time of year. Even if the Devils aren't in it, playoff hockey is right around the corner. And
Uh, we've talked about this before. You will be a little bit more glued in
yeah,
to
well,
the
I
playoff
love playoff
hockey,
hockey.
regardless. It
No
gets tough for me
stakes in the
with
game, too.
no
It,
stakes.
it would be even better for me. So,
The thing is, there's no stakes in the game, but then you remember the Hurricanes play and the
well, yeah,
Flyers play.
that would be the only thing because as once the Hurricanes are eliminated, boom, there we go.
Then it gets a lot more fun. I'm with
And
you
it's
there.
even, yeah. So,
So it's something to look forward to, Devils
yeah.
fans. We'll see you guys next time on Puck of the Parkway. Thanks to Dan Reba and I've been James Burley. Take care.
Peace.